Rise of nationalism, freedom movement. Meaning of nationalism and emergence of Indian nationalism and India's freedom movement. Introduction. The word national is generally used for a group of persons belonging to a single race and of common ancestral origin. The idea of nationalism became prominent in Europe in 19th century, which paved the way for the emergence of nation-states. Nation-states were established for people belonging to one race, one religion, and one language all over Europe. But the Indian nationalism was different from that of Europe. The British rule in India destroyed the Indians' old social, political, and economic systems. Factors and forces. Political associations. Indians who received English education played an important role in spreading nationalistic ideas all over India. They knew that the English people were enjoying democratic principles like liberty and equality in their country, while Indians were deprived of such liberty. The educated Indians all over the country developed a common outlook on the problems of India irrespective of their regions, languages, communities, castes, groups, etc. Political associations. In the presidency towns of Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta, political associations were formed by Indians in the second half of 19th century. In 1851, British Indian Association was formed in Calcutta. In 1852, Bombay Association was formed in Bombay and Madras. Native Association was formed in Madras. The objectives of all these associations were to demand a share for the Indians in the administration of the country and also wanted the Indians be allowed to hold high positions in the administration. Formation of Indian National Congress, 1885. At the same time, an all-India level association called Indian National Congress was formed in 1885 at Bombay to ventilate the grievances of Indians to the British government. Evo Hume, a retired British official, played an important role for the formation of the Congress. 72 delegates from all over the country attended the Congress meeting, which was held in December 1885 in Bombay. This meeting was presided over by Umesh Chandra Banerjee. The important leaders who attended this meeting were Dadabhai Nauroji, Feroz Shah Mehta, S. Subramanya Iyer, P. Anandacharyalu, etc. Early phase of freedom movement from 1885 to 1905. Freedom movement in India can be divided into three phases. The first phase of freedom movement was from 1885 to 1905. The first 20 years of Congress are described as moderate period as the demands of the congressmen were moderate. The Congress of this period further demanded reduction of 1. Land revenue, 2. Expenditure of the government on administration, and 3. Maintenance of army. The Congress of modern period was led by Madan Mohan Malviya, Gopalakrishna Gokhale, and Dadabhai Nauroji, and they adopted a moderate policy of pray, petitions, and protest to fulfill their demands. Freedom movement during 1905 to 1919. The period between 1905 to 1919 was called extremist period. The events occurred outside India also influenced the extremists. Ethiopians defeated Italy in 1896, and in 1905, Japan, a small Asian country, defeated Russia. The victory of Japan and the revolution in Russia against its emperor had influenced the Indians greatly. Partition of Bengal. Bengal was the largest province in the British India with 78 million population, as it included Bihar and parts of Orissa. There were long pending schemes to divide Bengal for administrative convenience. Meetings were held in Bengal protesting the partition. A movement was started to end the partition both by extremists and moderates. The day of partition was observed as mourning day, and people all over Bengal tied Rakis on their wrists as a mark of unity, whether they were Hindus or Muslims. Vande Mataram movement. The silent features of this movement, which was started in 1905, were to encourage Swadeshi goods and to boycott foreign goods. Foreign goods thus collected were openly burnt with the slogan Vande Mataram. As you know, Vande Mataram, a patriotic song written by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyaya. Swadeshi and boycott movements were started with a view to end the partition of Bengal. School children and college students played an important role in this movement. Indian barbers and washermen also refused to service the British. Swadeshi included everything Indian. Boycott movement extended to boycott of British schools, colleges and offices. Minto Morale reforms. The Act of 1909 introduced reforms which were called Minto Morale reforms with a view to lull the agitation. At last in 1911, an imperial darbar was held at Delhi in which the British King George V and his queen were present. It was declared in this darbar that the partition of Bengal was annulled and the capital of British India was shifted from Calcutta to Delhi. With this declaration, Vande Mataram movement came to an end. Home Rule movement. The World War I broke out in 1914. The British government made India to get involved in the war by using our soldiers and other resources. In 1914, Bala Gangadhar Tilak was released from imprisonment. During the war period, Indian leaders intensified the nationalist propaganda and demanded for introduction of Home Rule. Mrs. Annie Besant, an Irish lady, founded a Home Rule League. Home Rule means self-government within the British Empire. But later, she toured all over the country and inspired the people of India with her stirring speeches to popularize the Home Rule movement. Bala Gangadhar Tilak also founded Home Rule League in Pune. Revolutionary movements in India and abroad. During the Swadeshi and boycott movements, there were small groups of revolutionaries in some parts of the country who wanted to overthrow the British rule by force. Lucknow Pact. An important event during this period was the Lucknow Pact of 1916. The Congress and Muslim League signed this pact to work together to attain self-government. In 1917, Edwin Montague, the Secretary of State for India, announced in the British Parliament that the British government would slowly introduce self-governing institutions with the aim of giving a responsible government to India after the war. Congress believed him and asked Indian people to help the British with men, money and material. Gandhian era, 1920 to 1947. The third and final phase of nationalist movement of India was led by Gandhi. After his return from South Africa in 1915, Gandhi plunged himself into Indian politics. His first struggle was started in Champaran district in Bihar in 1917. Due to the interference of Gandhi to a large extent, the problems of the indigo cultivators were solved. In 1918, Gandhi represented the textile workers of Ahmedabad who were agitating for a rise in their wages, and the peasants of Kaira in Gujarat who wanted the suspension of collection of revenue as the crops failed. He preached Hindu-Muslim unity. Gandhiji used the weapon of Satyagraha, which played a dominant role in the struggle for freedom under his leadership. The word Satyagraha is composed of two separate words, Satya, truth, and Agraha, adherence, holding fast, which means holding onto the truth. This was adopted by the people of India in their struggle for independence. Jallianwala Bagh massacre. The local leaders Satyapal and Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu were arrested on 10th April 1919. To show their protest, people gathered in a park called Jallianwala Bagh on 13th April in Amritsar. This park was surrounded by high walls on three sides. Suddenly, Sir Michael O'Dwyer, the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab, entered the park with his troops, and without giving a warning to the people to disperse, he ordered his troops to open fire. For 10 minutes the firing continued on unarmed men, and it was stopped only when the ammunition was over. Nearly 1,000 persons were killed and several wounded. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre shocked the entire nation. Michael O'Dwyer was, however, honored when he went back to England. Rabindranath Tagore gave up his knighthood in protest against the killings of Jallianwala Bagh. Khilafat movement. The Turkish Sultan was recognized as the head of all the Muslims in the world. He was called the Caliph. During the period of the World War I, the British government declared that Turkey will not be deprived of all her territories. Abul Kalam Azad and Hazrat Mohini forced the British to accept the demands of Caliphate Committee. It was joined by Gandhiji, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, Motilal Nehru, Swami Shraddhananda were the other prominent Hindus who supported this movement. All these leaders gave a call for non-cooperation to the government. All India Caliphate Conference was held on 17th October, and that day was celebrated as All India Caliphate Day. Non-cooperation movement. In 1920, the Congress meeting was held at Nagpur under the leadership of Gandhiji. It was attended by 15,000 delegates, and the Congress constitution was amended and the following resolutions were passed. 1. Attainment of Swaraj by non-violent methods. 2. To undo the justice done to Punjab and Turkey. This movement was called non-cooperation movement. Gandhiji returned his Kaiser I Hind title in August 1920. There were strikes, hartals, and burning of foreign goods all over the country. Many Indians were killed in firings and many others were jailed. In Kerala, a rebellion broke out by Mofla peasants and it was suppressed brutally. Though Gandhiji warned the people many times not to resort to violent methods, on 5th February 1922, in Chauri Chaura in Uttar Pradesh, people resorted to violence. Gandhiji stopped the movement because it lost its non-violent nature. On 10th March 1922, Gandhiji was arrested and jailed for 6 years. New developments in the struggle for freedom. After the withdrawal of non-cooperation movement, there was no mass struggle for some time, which made the Indian people disheartened. Hindu-Muslim unity, which was achieved before war, also weakened. Formation of Swaraj Party in 1923 as an integral part of Congress was a ray of hope which helped to keep the freedom struggle alive. Motilal Nehru, C.R. Das and others who were called pro-changers supported the view that congressmen should contest in the elections and enter the legislature and fight freedom, being a part of the government. Simon Commission. In 1927, the British government appointed a commission under the chairmanship of Sir John Simon to inquire into the working of the Government of India Act of 1919 and to suggest needed reforms if any. This commission was called Simon Commission. In 1927, the annual session of Congress was held at Madras and it decided to boycott the Simon Commission. Muslim League also decided to boycott it. Wherever the commission went, it faced hartals and massive demonstrations in protest, and the people shouted, "Simon, go back." Demand for Purna Swaraj. As 1-year ultimatum given to the British government to grant dominion status to India was over by December 1929. Gandhiji moved a resolution declaring on 31st December that the word Swarajya would mean complete freedom. The Congress decided to start a civil disobedience movement, and 26th January was to be observed as Independence Day all over the country. Every year from 1930 onwards, a pledge was taken on 26th January 1930 that they would fight for Purna Swaraj or complete independence. Civil disobedience movement. With the observance of Independence Day, the seeds of civil disobedience were sown in India. It was followed up by Gandhiji, who launched civil disobedience movement, in which the first program was violating the laws made by the British. Gandhiji began his famous Dandi March on 12th March 1930. He left the Sabarmati ashram at Ahmedabad on foot with 78 satyagrahis and reached Dandi, a village on the western seacoast of India, on 6th April 1930. There Gandhiji broke salt law by preparing salt by boiling seawater. Round Table Conferences. The British government convened the first Round Table Conference in November 1930 in London to consider the reforms to be introduced as proposed by the Simon Commission. Round Table Conference means a meeting of all political parties, associations and heads of native states of India. The conference was attended by Indian princes, Muslim League and Hindu Mahasabha and some others. But nothing was concluded in this conference, as the British knew that without the participation of Congress, they could not make any constitutional changes in India. In 1931, Viceroy Irwin was instructed by the British government to persuade the Congress to join the Second Round Table Conference. Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Viceroy Irwin released Gandhiji from jail and entered into an agreement with him in which he agreed to release all political prisoners against whom there were no charges of violence, and in turn, Gandhiji had to suspend the civil disobedience movement. Congress, in its Karachi session in 1931, under the presidency of Vallabhbhai Patel, approved the agreement and decided to participate in the Second Round Table Conference, and Gandhiji was selected to represent the Congress at the conference. He attended the Second Round Table Conference in London. Gandhiji came back to India and revived the civil disobedience movement. The Third Round Table Conference was held in 1932. This was boycotted by the Congress. It discussed the matters relating to franchisee, federal finance and state finance. Communalism and the freedom movement. You have read earlier that a result of divide and rule policy of the British, the Muslim League was formed in 1906. In 1915, Hindu Mahasabha was formed. Communal leaders among Sikhs also started raising communal demands. But to a large extent, Congress leaders tried to maintain unity among Hindus and Muslims, and there were a good number of Muslim nationalist leaders in the Congress. Gandhiji went on a fast for 21 days and tried to restore peace among Hindus and Muslims in 1924. Movements of depressed classes. Against the shameful practices of untouchability and for the upliftment of depressed classes, there were a number of reform movements. They were led by E.V. Ramaswamy, Naikar, Kalappan and T.K. Madhavan and Narayana Guru. The leading figure in these movements of the depressed classes was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He participated in the Round Table Conferences and pressed the British government for provisions to safeguard the interests of the depressed classes. Gandhiji also worked hard for eradication of untouchability. He founded Anti-Untouchability League to carry on the message of eradication of untouchability. He broke out a journal by name Harijan, and he called the so-called untouchables as Harijans, if that the people of God. Socialist ideas and movements. Movements of peasants and workers. Rise of capitalism all over the world deprived the workers of the gains in industries. With the result, they remained poor and their living conditions were miserable. In 19th century, workers began to organize themselves into associations to better their economic conditions. Jawaharlal Nehru, impressed by the socialist ideas, wanted to link up the struggle for freedom with the struggle of workers and peasants for better living conditions. Under his guidance, 1934, Congress Socialist Party was formed and it worked within Congress. Indian freedom movement and the world. When India launched freedom struggle, many people of other countries, including Britain, supported it. Organizations were formed in the countries by Indians. Dadabhai Nauroji formed an organization in England with the support of several English people. In 1927, the Congress of Oppressed Nationalites was held in Brussels. Individual Satyagrahas. Congress started the Individual Satyagraha movement in October 1940. Vinoba Bhave was the first Satyagrahi. All the prominent leaders of Congress, namely Sri Krishna Sinha, C. Rajagopalachari, who worked as chief ministers of Bihar and Madras respectively, Sarojini Naidu, Aruna Asaf Ali, N.V. Gadgil, Mia Iftikharuddin were the other Satyagrahis who were arrested and jailed. In the meanwhile, Germany attacked Russia, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, the American naval base. Indian leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad declared if India was allowed to have its choicest government, Indians also would join fight against fascist countries. Quit India movement. After the failure of Cripps mission in August 1942, Congress met in Bombay and passed a resolution. This resolution called for immediate withdrawal of the British rule in India. Indian leaders declared if India was allowed to have freedom, it would help Britain in the war. The resolution of 8th August 1942 further approved to start a mass struggle on non-violent basis throughout the country. Gandhiji said that he would give Indians a short mantra if they do or die. In the attempt to make India free, either Indians achieve freedom or die in the struggle. He raised the slogan, Quit India, against the British, which means leave India. This movement was known as Quit India movement. Azad Hind Fauz. The people who believed that India could not achieve independence without violence and armed attacks formed Azad Hind Fauz or Indian National Army during the period of World War II. Ras Behari Bose, an Indian revolutionary, escaped from India in 1915 and lived in Japan for many years. An Indian Independence League of Overseas Indians was established and a conference was held in Bangkok. This conference was attended by 100 delegates of Indians living in Southeast Asia and passed 33 resolutions, of which inviting Subhash Chabdra Bose was one of them. Subhash Chabdra Bose escaped to Germany in 1941 and he came to Singapore to rebuild Indian Independence League and INA to make them effective to achieve independence. On 21st October 1943, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose formed the provisional government at Singapore. He went to Andamans and hoisted the national flag of India there also. In 1944, Azad Hind Fauz attacked the northeastern parts of India against the British. Though Azad Hind Fauz failed to liberate India from British rule, it inspired man, young Indians and Indian national movement was highly influenced by the sacrifices made by Subhash Bose. Cabinet Mission. In 1946, British government announced that they would grant us independence. It further announced that they had decided to send to India a special mission consisting of 3 cabinet ministers, Lord Pettick Lawrence, Sir Stafford Cripps and A.V. Alexander to hold negotiations with Indian leaders on the transfer of power. Demand for Pakistan. Muslim League under the leadership of Muhammad Ali Jinnah demanded a separate state for Muslims under the name Pakistan. Finally, it was decided to divide India into two separate states, Indian Union and Pakistan. Pakistan would be comprised of West Punjab, East Bengal, Sindh and Northwest Frontier Province. Interim government. Viceroy Wavell invited Nehru and Jinnah to form interim government till the Constitution of India was written, and accordingly a regular government was formed. Jinnah refused to take part in the government. Finally, an interim government headed by Jawaharlal Nehru was formed. Constituent Assembly. By the end of July 1946, elections were held for the Constituent Assembly. The members for this assembly were elected from the provincial legislatures and the princely states. The purpose of this assembly was to write the constitution for independent India, and it started to work from December 1946 and functioned as the Parliament of Independent India. Partition of India. The Muslim League pressed for a separate state for Muslims. In March 1947, Lord Mountbatten, the Viceroy of India, presented a plan for the division of India into two states. The Congress and Mahatma Gandhi, who stood for United India, finally agreed for the partition, and there were brutal killings of people in Punjab, Bengal, Bihar and some other places in support of Pakistan. Independence. To avoid further worsening of the situation, independence was declared for the two separate states, namely Indian Union and Pakistan. At 12 midnight on 14th to 15th August 1947, the Indian Union was born. Pakistan comprised of East Bengal, West Punjab, Sindh and Northwest Frontier Province. This division was made according to Indian Independence Act 1947.